Admiral Kexthor stood on the bridge of his massive warship and looked at the strange new star system through the viewing screen. His 6 eyes studied the small blue planet that orbited the yellow star. The planet looked peaceful and quiet, but his sensors told him something different. There were millions of life forms on that world, and they had built cities and machines. The Zephyrian Collective had conquered 17 different worlds in the past 50 years. Each time the process was the same. They would arrive with their powerful fleet, show their weapons, and the local species would surrender. It was always logical and clean. No one wanted to fight when they knew they would lose. Kexthor had studied the reports about this new species called humans. They seemed simple enough. They had basic space travel and weapons that were far behind Zephyrian technology. Their ships were slow and their guns were weak. According to all calculations, they should surrender within hours of seeing the Collective's fleet. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was having a normal day patrolling the outer edge of the human colony when his sensors picked up something strange. 3 ships had appeared near the asteroid belt, and they did not look like anything he had ever seen. The ships were smooth and silver with no visible weapons or engines. They moved in perfect formation like they were dancing. Jake called his team on the radio. "Hey guys, we got company out here. 3 unknown ships. Real fancy looking." His team consisted of 4 other pilots and small fighter ships. They were not supposed to handle first contact situations, but Jake had never been good at following rules. The alien ships seemed to notice them and started moving closer. Jake could see they were much bigger than his fighter, probably 10 times the size. Any smart person would call for backup and wait for orders. Jake was not known for being smart. "All right, team, let's go say hello," Jake said into his radio. He pushed his ship forward at full speed toward the alien vessels. Back on the colony ship New Terra, Captain Lisa Martinez was drinking coffee when the alarm started ringing. The communications officer turned to her with wide eyes. "Captain, we just lost contact with Patrol 7. Their last message was something about unknown ships." Lisa put down her coffee and walked to the command center. She had been expecting this day for years. Everyone knew that humans would eventually meet aliens, but she had hoped it would happen somewhere else. The colony had 50,000 people, and most of them were families with children. "Send a message to Earth Command," she told her communications officer. "Tell them we have possible first contact, and get me a full scan of the outer system." On the alien ship, Admiral Kexthor watched the small human fighters approach his scouts. He was confused by their behavior. The humans were flying straight at his ships with no hesitation. His scouts had weapons that could destroy the human fighters in seconds, but the humans did not seem to care. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "the humans are not responding to our warning signals. They appear to be attacking." Kexthor studied the situation. In his 50 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. When a small force met a larger force, the smaller force always tried to escape or surrender. These humans were doing neither. Jake Morrison flew his fighter between the 2 larger alien ships and started firing his guns. His weapons barely scratched their shields, but he kept shooting anyway. "Come on, you guys, join the party," he yelled to his team. The other human pilots followed Jake's lead. They split up and started attacking the alien ships from all sides. Their weapons were not doing any real damage, but they were making a lot of noise and confusion. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was in her lab when the alert came through the ship's communication system. As the colony's expert on alien life, she was supposed to be part of any first contact situation. She quickly gathered her equipment and headed for the command center. When she arrived, Captain Martinez was staring at the main screen with a worried look. "Doctor, we need you to figure out how to talk to them. Our patrol is engaging 3 alien ships." Elena looked at the screen and saw the small human fighters dancing around the much larger alien vessels. "Captain, what are our people doing? Those ships could destroy them easily." "That's what I'm worried about," Martinez replied. On the alien ship, Kexthor was becoming more confused by the minute. His scouts were reporting that the human fighters were using ramming attacks. They were actually trying to crash their ships into his vessels. One human pilot had ejected from his damaged fighter and was now floating in space. But he was still shooting at the alien ships with a hand weapon. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "we have analyzed the human brain patterns. They show high levels of aggression and excitement. They do not appear to be afraid." Kexthor had fought against 17 different species, and they all showed fear when facing superior firepower. Fear was logical. Fear helped creatures stay alive. These humans seemed to be missing that basic survival instinct. Jake Morrison's fighter was badly damaged, but he was still flying and shooting. His team had managed to disable one of the alien ships by ramming it repeatedly. The other two alien ships were retreating, but Jake wanted to follow them. "Morrison, get back here right now." Captain Martinez's voice came through his radio. "That's an order." Jake looked at the retreating alien ships and sighed. "Copy that, Captain. Returning to base." He turned his damaged fighter around and headed back to the colony ship. Admiral Kexthor watched the small human fighters return to their base. His scouts had suffered damage from creatures using technology that was hundreds of years behind his own. More importantly, the humans had shown no fear and no desire to surrender. He called his science officer. "Send a full report to the Collective Council. Include everything about human behavior and tactics." "What should I conclude in the report, Admiral?" Kexthor thought for a long moment. "Tell them that this species appears to suffer from a mental disorder that prevents them from recognizing superior force. They fight like they have nothing to lose, even when they clearly have everything to lose." Dr. Elena Rodriguez finally managed to establish basic communication with the retreating alien ships. The message was simple but disturbing. The aliens wanted to know if all humans were insane, or if this was just a special military unit. Elena did not know how to answer that question. After watching Jake Morrison and his team attack ships 10 times their size without hesitation, she was starting to wonder the same thing herself. 6 months passed before the aliens returned, and when they came back, they brought friends. Fleet Commander Velnash led a massive armada of over 200 ships toward human space. The Zephyrian Collective had decided that the first encounter was just bad luck. This time they would use overwhelming force to make the humans see reason. Colonel Ryan Brooks stood in the command bunker of Haven Colony and watched the alien fleet approach on his screens.
He had 50 Marines and about 300 civilian volunteers to defend against an invasion force that could probably destroy planets.
Any reasonable person would start planning an evacuation. Ryan had never been accused of being reasonable. "All right, people, listen up," Ryan announced to his mixed force of soldiers and farmers. "We got about 200 alien ships coming our way, and they probably want to take our home. Anyone who wants to leave can go now, and no one will think less of you." Nobody moved. A farmer named Joe raised his hand. "Colonel, what's the plan?" Ryan smiled. "We're going to make them regret coming here. First, we're going to load every cargo shuttle we have with nuclear devices. Then we're going to fly them straight into their biggest ships." The room was quiet for a moment. Then Joe nodded. "Sounds good to me. When do we start?" Captain Amy Sullivan commanded the human destroyer Defiant, one of only 5 warships defending the 3 human colonies. Her ship was fast but lightly armed compared to the alien vessels. Standard military doctrine said she should try to delay the enemy while evacuating civilians. Amy had read the manual, but she did not like following it. "Weapons officer, load everything we have," she ordered. "Communication, send a message to the alien fleet." "What should the message say, Captain?" Amy thought for a moment. "Tell them they picked the wrong species to mess with." Fleet Commander Velnash received the human message and was puzzled by its contents. According to his intelligence reports, the humans were vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Their message should have been a surrender request, not a threat. He decided the humans must not understand their situation. "Send them our standard surrender demand," he told his communications officer. "Make it clear that resistance is futile." The human response came back within minutes. It was not a surrender. Instead, it was a detailed description of what the humans planned to do to his ships, followed by several words that his translator could not process but seemed to be insults. On Haven Colony, Ryan Brooks watched the first wave of alien landing ships approach the surface. He had positioned his nuclear-armed cargo shuttles in the colony's launch bays, each one piloted by a volunteer who knew they would not be coming back. "Remember," he told the pilots over the radio, "get as close as you can before you detonate. We want to take as many of them with us as possible." The first shuttle launched with a farmer named Pete at the controls. He had never flown anything bigger than a crop duster, but he was a quick learner. He aimed his shuttle directly at the largest alien landing ship and pushed the engines to maximum power. "Ill." Nash watched in horror as the human shuttle crashed into his landing ship and exploded with nuclear force. The blast destroyed both vessels and damaged 2 others nearby. Before he could process what had happened, 5 more human shuttles launched from the colony. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are using suicide attacks. They're turning their own ships into weapons." Velnash had never encountered anything like this in his long military career. Suicide attacks were theoretically possible, but no logical species would waste their own lives and equipment in such a manner. "How many more shuttles do they have?" "Unknown, sir. But they appear to have converted all their cargo vessels into bombs." Captain Amy Sullivan pushed her ship toward the alien fleet at maximum speed. Her weapons were firing continuously, but they were not doing much damage to the alien shields. She needed to get closer, much closer. "Captain," her first officer said, "we're taking heavy fire. Shields are failing." Amy nodded. "All hands prepare for ramming speed. We're going to show these aliens how humans say goodbye." "Ma'am, that will destroy our ship." "That's the idea," Amy replied. "If we're going down, we're taking their flagship with us." On the planet's surface, Sergeant Peter Hamilton was organizing the civilian resistance. The aliens had managed to land troops despite the shuttle attacks, but they were not prepared for what happened next. Peter had convinced the colonists to turn their own buildings into traps. "Mrs. Johnson," he said to an elderly woman, "when the aliens come to search your house, you just press this button and go hide in your basement." Mrs. Johnson looked at the explosive device Peter had installed in her living room. "Won't this destroy my house?" "Yes, ma'am, but it'll also destroy any aliens inside it." "Good," she said firmly. "I never liked that wallpaper anyway." The alien ground forces advanced through the colony expecting normal urban warfare. Instead, they found that every building was a potential bomb. The humans had rigged their own homes, shops, and schools with explosives. When the aliens entered a building, the owners would detonate it, often killing themselves along with the invaders. Dr. Marcus Kim was interviewing captured alien soldiers in the makeshift prison facility. As a psychologist, he was trying to understand how their minds worked. What he discovered was disturbing. "Tell me about your military training," he asked one alien prisoner through a translator. "We study the psychology of conquered species," the alien replied. "Every intelligent race follows predictable patterns when faced with superior force. They attempt to negotiate, then they surrender to preserve their lives and culture." "What about species that fight to the death?" The alien looked confused. "That would be illogical. A dead species cannot preserve its culture or continue its existence. Fighting to the death serves no purpose." Marcus made notes in his file. The aliens literally could not understand why humans would choose death over surrender. To them, it was a form of mental illness. Fleet Commander Velnash was losing ships faster than he had thought possible. The human destroyer had rammed his flagship and caused massive damage. The suicide shuttles had destroyed 6 of his landing craft. And now his ground forces were reporting that the humans were using their own wounded as bait for ambushes. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "the humans have booby-trapped their hospital. When our medics tried to treat human wounded, the entire building exploded." Velnash struggled to understand the tactical situation. The humans were destroying their own infrastructure, killing their own people, and sacrificing their equipment. By any logical measure, they were losing the battle. But his forces were taking casualties at an unsustainable rate. After 3 days of fighting, Velnash controlled 2 of the 3 human colonies. However, the cost had been enormous. He had lost over 30 ships and thousands of ground troops. The colonies he had captured were mostly ruins, and the human survivors continued to fight as guerrillas using increasingly creative methods. The worst part was that the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. His intelligence officers reported that captured humans were laughing and making jokes even while dying from their injuries. Some had asked if they could have their weapons back so they could try again. Velnash sent a report to the Collective Council explaining the situation. He requested massive reinforcements and suggested that humanity might be too dangerous to conquer. The cost of victory was becoming higher than the value of the conquered territory. On Earth, military commanders studied the reports from the colony battles. The humans had technically lost, but they had inflicted damage far beyond what should have been possible. General Claire Watson began planning a counterattack using the lessons learned from the colony defense. "If the aliens think we're crazy now," she told her staff, "wait until they see what we do when we're really angry." 2 years into the war, Supreme War Coordinator Thecamar sat in his command chamber studying hundreds of battle reports. The Zephyrian Collective had won most of their engagements against the humans, but each victory cost more than the last. His military analysts had spent months trying to create new tactics to counter human unpredictability. "We have identified the problem," his chief strategist reported. "Humans do not follow logical combat patterns. When cornered, they become more dangerous instead of surrendering. When outnumbered, they split into smaller groups and attack from multiple directions. When their weapons fail, they use their ships as weapons." Theckamar nodded grimly. "What solutions do you propose?" "We have developed new protocols based on studying human behavior. We will maintain greater distances, use automated systems instead of troops, and avoid close combat entirely." General Claire Watson stood on the bridge of the mobile command ship Enterprise and reviewed her own battle plans. The aliens had adapted their tactics, staying farther away and using long-range weapons. They thought this would solve their human problem. Claire knew better. "All right, people," she announced to her staff. "The aliens want to play it safe and keep their distance. That's fine with us. We're going to give them something new to worry about." She activated the holographic display showing the next phase of her plan. "We're sending small teams deep into alien territory. Their job is not to win battles, but to make the aliens afraid to go anywhere." Lieutenant Nick Foster was one of the volunteers for the deep insertion missions. His team consisted of 6 specialists with experimental equipment and orders that basically said cause trouble. They had been dropped behind alien lines with enough supplies for 2 weeks and no way to get home. "What exactly are we supposed to do out here?" asked Corporal Jenny Adams, the team's demolitions expert. Nick grinned. "We're going to teach the aliens that nowhere is safe. First stop is that supply depot about 50 miles north of here." The Zephyrian supply depot was heavily defended with automated systems and energy shields. It was designed to be impossible for small teams to attack. Nick and his team studied it for 2 days before making their move. Instead of trying to destroy the depot, they broke in and reprogrammed the supply systems. Now, when alien units requested food, they would receive defective weapons. When they requested ammunition, they would get contaminated food. When they requested medical supplies, they would get exploding packages. Captain Helen Price commanded a small fleet of human ships that seemed to be running away from every fight. The aliens thought they had finally found predictable human behavior. Price's ships would engage briefly, take damage, and then retreat. The alien commanders began following them, believing they had found a weakness to exploit. What the aliens did not know was that Price was leading them into a trap that spanned 3 star systems. Every retreat was carefully planned to draw more alien ships into the killing zone. She had spent months setting up hidden weapons platforms, minefields, and automated defense systems along the route. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we have 43 alien ships following us now. They think we're running scared." Price smiled. "Let them think that. In about 6 hours, they're going to find out what scared humans can do when they stop running." Dr. Jonathan Lee was working with captured alien technology in a secret research facility. His job was to figure out how alien weapons and computers worked so humans could use them. What he discovered was more important than new weapons. "The aliens build everything based on logical assumptions," he explained to General Watson during a video call. "Their weapon systems assume the user wants to minimize casualties. Their computers assume the operator wants to preserve data. Their ships assume the crew wants to survive." "What does that mean for us?" Watson asked. "It means we can break their systems by using them in ways they never expected. We can turn their weapons into bombs, their computers into viruses, and their ships into guided missiles." Commander Theckamar was reviewing the latest reports from the front lines, and nothing made sense anymore. Human teams were appearing hundreds of light years behind Zephyrian lines. Alien supply convoys were receiving packages that exploded when opened. Entire alien fleets were disappearing into what appeared to be empty space. "How are they doing this?" he demanded from his intelligence chief. "We believe the humans are using our own systems against us," came the reply. "They have learned to reprogram our technology to serve their purposes. They are also using tactics that we did not know were possible, such as, they are turning retreat into a form of attack. They lead our forces into prepared positions and then destroy them. They are using our pursuit instincts against us." The alien fleet that had been chasing Captain Price finally reached the end of her planned route. They found themselves in a system that appeared to be empty except for a few small asteroids. The alien commander was preparing to turn back when the asteroids started moving. What the aliens thought were rocks were actually human ships covered in camouflage material. Worse, the entire system was filled with hidden weapons that activated as soon as the alien fleet was in the center. The humans had turned empty space into a giant trap. "All ships, fire everything you have," Price ordered. "Don't let any of them escape to report what happened here." Lieutenant Nick Foster's team had been operating behind enemy lines for 6 weeks. They had destroyed 12 supply depots, reprogrammed 8 computer systems, and convinced an entire alien regiment that their own headquarters was sending them poisoned food. Now they were planning their biggest operation yet. "We're going to take over their communication system," Nick explained to his team. "Instead of destroying it, we're going to use it to send false orders to their other units." "What kind of false orders?" asked Jenny. "The kind that will make them attack each other," Nick replied. Supreme War Coordinator Thekmar was losing control of the situation. Reports were coming in of alien units receiving contradictory orders, supply systems delivering weapons to human forces, and entire fleets vanishing without explanation. The humans were not just fighting the Zephyrian military, they were turning it against itself. "Sir," his aide reported, 3 more sector commanders are requesting permission to withdraw from human space. They say their forces are suffering from what they call paranoia syndrome." "What is paranoia syndrome?" "They no longer trust their own equipment, their own supplies, or their own orders. Some units are refusing to engage human forces because they believe it might be a trap set by other Zephyrian units." Thekmar realized that the humans had done something unprecedented in galactic warfare. They had made the Zephyrian military afraid of itself. Every victory was suspect. Every supply delivery was dangerous, and every order might be false. The Collective Council was meeting an emergency session to discuss the human problem. Some members wanted to continue the war with even greater force. Others wanted to withdraw and avoid human space entirely. A few suggested that they should try to understand human psychology better. "The humans are not following any known patterns of intelligent behavior," reported the chief military analyst. "They appear to gain strength from desperation, find joy in impossible odds, and consider death in battle to be a form of success." "How do we fight an enemy like that?" asked one council member. The analyst was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know if it is possible." The Zephyrian Collective had made their final decision. Supreme War Coordinator Thekmar received orders that came directly from the High Council. Gather every remaining ship in the galaxy and attack Earth itself. If they could destroy the human homeworld, the scattered colonies would surely surrender. It was their last chance to end this war before it destroyed them completely. "Admiral." Patricia Ross stood in the command center on Luna Station and watched the largest alien fleet in galactic history approach Earth. Her sensors counted over 800 ships, more firepower than had ever been assembled in one place. She had 47 human ships and a plan that made her own officers question her sanity. "Ma'am," her chief of staff said quietly, "are you sure about Protocol Omega? We only get one chance at this." Patricia looked at Earth floating in the distance, blue and beautiful and home to 12 billion people. "Colonel, the aliens think they can scare us by bringing everything they have. They're about to learn that cornering humanity is the biggest mistake anyone can make." Protocol Omega had been developed 3 years earlier by a committee of scientists and military leaders who were asked to plan for the worst possible scenario. The plan was so dangerous that it required approval from both Earth's military command and the civilian government. It had taken Patricia 6 months to get permission to use it. Captain Greg Turner was leading the evacuation of Earth's major cities while simultaneously preparing the planet's defenses. Millions of people were being moved to underground shelters, but millions more had volunteered to stay and fight. The volunteers included children as young as 16, who had convinced their parents to let them join the defense forces. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we have 3 million civilian volunteers who want to help with the defense. Most of them have no military training." Greg smiled grimly. "Give them weapons and point them toward the aliens. Military training is nice, but angry humans are scarier than any textbook." "Soldier, Lieutenant." Colonel Monica Shaw commanded the orbital defense. "Platforms around Earth. These massive stations were armed with the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built, but they were still no match for the approaching alien fleet." Monica had orders to hold her position until the last possible moment, then implement the final stage of Protocol Omega. "All stations, this is Shaw," she announced on the command frequency. When I give the signal, we overload every power core simultaneously. The chain reaction should take out most of their front line. Ma'am, came a voice from Station 7. That will destroy us too. That's the point, Lieutenant. We're not here to survive. We're here to make sure they remember what happens when they threaten our home. Master Chief Kevin Jones was preparing for the most unusual mission of his military career. While the space battle raged above, he would lead a small team to board the alien command ship and deliver a message directly to their supreme commander. The message was not a surrender or negotiation request. Remember, he told his team as they prepared their boarding craft, we're not trying to capture their ship or rescue prisoners. We're just delivering a message, and if we happen to blow up their command center while we're there, that's just good manners. Dr. Catherine Bell was in her laboratory studying the final pieces of her research into Zephyrian psychology. After 5 years of studying captured aliens and their behavior patterns, she finally understood the fundamental difference between their species and humanity. The discovery was both terrifying and hopeful. General Ross, she said into her communicator, I need to brief you on my findings before the battle begins. This could change everything. Make it quick, Doctor. We have about 2 hours before they arrive. The Zephyrians evolved as a prey species. Their entire civilization is built around avoiding conflict and minimizing risk. They cannot understand a species that actively seeks out dangerous situations. And humans? We're persistence hunters. We evolved by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We never learned when to give up because giving up meant starving to death. The alien fleet entered Earth's solar system with weapons charged and shields at maximum power. Supreme War Coordinator Tekkamar had planned this attack for months. He would destroy the human orbital defenses, bombard the planet's major cities, and force the survivors to surrender. It should have been simple. What happened instead was chaos. The human orbital platforms did not try to retreat or defend themselves. Instead, they flew directly at his largest ships and exploded with nuclear force. Each platform took one of his capital ships with it when it died. Sir? His tactical officer reported in shock. The humans are destroying their own defense stations to damage our fleet. They're using suicide attacks on a massive scale. Tekkamar watched in horror as humanity's entire orbital defense network transformed into guided missiles aimed at his fleet. The humans were literally throwing away their most powerful weapons to destroy his ships. It made no tactical sense, but it was devastatingly effective. Captain Greg Turner was coordinating the ground defense of Earth when the alien landing ships broke through the orbital battle. He had positioned his forces in the major cities, but his real plan was much more extreme than anyone realized. All units, he announced on the emergency frequency, activate the urban demolition charges. If they want our cities, they can have the rubble. Across Earth, explosions began detonating in carefully planned sequences. Humans were destroying their own cities rather than let them be captured intact. Skyscrapers collapsed in precise patterns to create massive barricades. Bridges exploded to channel alien forces into kill zones. Entire neighborhoods vanished in nuclear fire. The alien ground commanders could not understand what they were seeing. The humans were destroying everything they had built over thousands of years. No logical species would obliterate their own civilization to deny it to an enemy. Master Chief Kevin Jones and his team managed to board the alien command ship during the chaos of the orbital battle. They fought their way through corridors filled with confused alien crew members who had never trained for repelling boarders. The aliens had not expected anyone to be crazy enough to board a ship during a space battle. There, Jones pointed to a heavily armored door. That's the command center. Remember, we just need to get close enough to deliver the message. The message was simple but important. Dr. Bell had written it based on her psychological research. It explained why humans could never be defeated by conventional military force, and why the Zephyrian collective needed to stop the war before it destroyed both species. Supreme War Coordinator Tekkamar was trying to manage the battle when alarms started ringing throughout his ship. Human soldiers had somehow boarded his vessel and were fighting their way toward the command center. His security forces were falling back in confusion. How did they get on board? He demanded. Unknown, sir. They appear to have flown their ship directly through our shields during the weapons exchange. The collision should have killed them all, but it didn't? No, sir. They survived the impact and are now fighting hand-to-hand with our security teams. The battle for Earth raged for 18 hours. When it ended, both fleets were mostly destroyed. The human orbital defenses were gone, but they had taken over 400 alien ships with them. Earth's major cities were in ruins, but the planet was still free. Master Chief Jones stood in the alien command center with his weapon pointed at Supreme War Coordinator Thekmar. Half of his team was dead and he was badly wounded, but he had delivered his message. "Do you understand now?" Jones asked through the translator. "You cannot defeat a species that considers death in battle to be victory. We will keep fighting until there is nothing left to fight with, and then we will fight with our bare hands." Thekmar looked around his destroyed command center and made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat from Earth's solar system. For the first time in Zephyrian military history, a superior force was surrendering to an inferior enemy. Dr. Catherine Bell's research had been correct. You could not defeat a species that gained strength from desperation and found honor in impossible odds. The war was over, not because humanity had won, but because the aliens finally understood that they could never win. 5 years after the Battle of Earth, Ambassador Daniel Carter sat in the conference room of the newly built Galactic Peace Station and tried to explain to a room full of alien diplomats why humans were not actually insane. It was not an easy job, especially since he was not entirely sure they were wrong. "The key thing to understand," Daniel said to the assembled representatives from 47 different species, "is that humans define victory differently than most other civilizations. We don't fight wars to gain territory or resources. We fight wars to prove that we cannot be defeated." A Zephyrian diplomat raised one of his 6 hands. "Ambassador Carter, how can destroying your own cities be considered a victory?" Daniel smiled. "Because we're still here and you stopped attacking us. From our perspective, that's a complete victory." Commander Laura Phillips was leading a joint patrol mission in the disputed border region between human and Krillian space. Her ship carried both human and alien crew members, which should have been a recipe for disaster. Instead, it had become the most effective peacekeeping force in the galaxy. "Commander," her Zephyrian tactical officer reported, "we have detected 2 Krillian battle groups moving toward each other. It appears they are preparing for combat." Laura nodded. "Send them a message. Tell them that humans are monitoring the situation and would be very disappointed if they started shooting at each other." Within 10 minutes, both Krillian fleets had changed course and returned to their home systems. No weapons were fired, no threats were made, and no one was injured. The mere possibility of human intervention had ended a conflict before it could begin. Dr. Benjamin Scott ran the Interspecies Psychology Institute on the rebuilt Luna Station. His research facility was dedicated to helping alien species understand human behavior and helping humans understand why their behavior was so confusing to everyone else. "The problem," he explained to his latest group of alien students, "is that humans evolved differently than most intelligent species. We developed as persistence hunters who succeeded by never giving up, even when logic demanded retreat." A young Andromedian scientist raised her hand. "Dr. Scott, does this mean humans are incapable of logical thought?" Ben laughed. "Not at all. We're perfectly capable of logic. We just don't let logic stop us from doing what we think is right. For most species, logic is the final word in any decision. For humans, logic is just the starting point." Captain Trevor Adams commanded the exploration vessel Horizon, which carried mixed crews on missions to establish contact with newly discovered civilizations. These first contact missions now included mandatory psychological preparation for alien crew members who might witness human problem-solving methods. "Remember," Trevor addressed his crew before their latest mission, "we're approaching a species that has never met humans before. Try not to do anything that will make them think we're completely insane until after we've established diplomatic relations." His Zephyrian science officer looked worried. "Captain, what exactly do you consider insane behavior?" Trevor thought for a moment. "Well, last week when we encountered that asteroid field, Lieutenant Murphy's solution was to fly through it at maximum speed while playing loud music. That might seem a bit extreme to species that prefer careful navigation. That is considered normal human behavior. Murphy's from Texas. For him, that was actually pretty conservative, Chief. Engineer Rachel Morgan had revolutionized galactic engineering by introducing human concepts of improvisation and good enough solutions to species that had previously insisted on perfection. Her innovations had advanced galactic civilization by centuries, mainly by teaching aliens that perfect was often the enemy of functional. The Zephyrians spent 300 years designing the perfect faster-than-light engine, she explained to a conference of engineers from 12 different species. It was absolutely flawless in every way. Meanwhile, humans built one that was held together with spare parts and wishful thinking. But it got us to other star systems 50 years earlier. But was the human design safe? Asked a concerned Rigelian engineer. Rachel grinned. Define safe. It only exploded about 30% of the time. And when it did explode, it usually happened far enough from populated areas that casualties were minimal. The room full of alien engineers looked horrified. Rachel realized she might need to work on her diplomatic skills. Ambassador Daniel Carter was preparing for the most important speech of his career. The Galactic Peace Council was meeting to discuss humanity's role in maintaining stability throughout the galaxy. Some species wanted humans to police every conflict, while others thought humans should be kept away from anything involving weapons. The truth, Daniel told the assembled delegates, is that humans don't want to rule the galaxy or control other species. We just want to be left alone to do human things in peace. But if someone threatens our friends or attacks innocent people, we will respond in ways that might seem disproportionate to species that prefer measured responses. What do you mean by disproportionate? Asked the Centaurian ambassador. Well, when the Vegan pirates attacked that civilian convoy last month, a normal response would have been to send patrol ships to drive them off. The human response was to track the pirates back to their base, destroy their entire fleet, and then spend 6 months hunting down every pirate who had escaped. That does seem excessive. Maybe, but piracy in this sector has dropped to 0% since then. Dr. Benjamin Scott was conducting his final research project on the psychological differences between humans and other species. His findings would be published as the definitive guide to understanding human behavior for non-human civilizations. The key insight, he wrote in his conclusion, is that humans do not fight wars to win them. Humans fight wars to end them. Most species fight until they achieve their objectives or until the cost becomes too high. Humans fight until the enemy stops wanting to fight. This explains why conventional military tactics are ineffective against humans. Standard warfare assumes that increasing the cost of conflict will eventually force surrender. Against humans, increasing the cost of conflict only makes them more determined to continue fighting. Captain Trevor Adams received a priority message while his ship was exploring a distant star system. A newly contacted species called the Hegemony had declared war on 3 smaller civilizations and was demanding that the Galactic Peace Council stay out of their internal affairs. Sir, his communications officer reported, the Hegemony has specifically stated that they are not afraid of human intervention. They claim their military is superior to anything humans can deploy. Trevor sighed. Do they know about the Battle of Earth? Yes, sir. They say they have studied human tactics and have developed countermeasures. Well, Trevor said, activating the ship's communication system. I guess someone needs to explain to them why that's not how humans work. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have another species that wants to learn about human military doctrine the hard way. The response from Earth was swift and decisive. Within a week, a human task force arrived in Hegemony space. The fleet was smaller than what the Hegemony had expected, but it carried a simple message. Stop attacking civilians or face the consequences. The Hegemony chose to fight. The war lasted exactly 4 days. When it ended, the Hegemony's military no longer existed. Their government had surrendered unconditionally, and their former enemies were under human protection. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood before the Galactic Peace Council once again, this time to address concerns about human military intervention in the Hegemony conflict. We gave them a choice, he explained simply. They could stop attacking innocent people, or they could find out what happens when humans stop being polite and start being Marines. They chose poorly. But Ambassador, protested the Hegemony's former military commander, your forces were outnumbered 10-1. How did you achieve victory so quickly? Daniel smiled. That's the thing about humans. We don't see being outnumbered as a disadvantage. We see it as a target-rich environment. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from humanity's introduction to galactic civilization. War was no longer a viable solution to political problems, not because weapons had become too destructive, but because humans had made war too expensive for anyone else to afford. Species across the galaxy had reached the same logical conclusion. Any problem that might require fighting humans was not worth solving. The result was an unprecedented era of peace. maintained not through diplomacy or treaties, but through the simple understanding that humans would cheerfully destroy themselves and everyone else to protect what they considered important. Dr. Benjamin Scott's final report concluded with a warning and a recommendation. Humans should be treated as allies and friends whenever possible, because the alternative is far too costly for any rational civilization to consider. They have turned warfare from a calculated political tool into a form of mutually assured madness. The galaxy is now at peace, not because conflicts have been resolved, but because every intelligent species understands that fighting humans is like wrestling with a tiger while covered in raw meat. You might win, but you will definitely regret it. As Daniel Carter often said in his speeches to new civilizations, humans don't start fights, but we do finish them.